All right. It's another episode of Escape Reality Star Wars Talk. We're
Whoa.
pre-recording
Yeah.
because some work stuff came up.
Yeah.
But we were like, we didn't want to pass on this opportunity to talk about Obi-Wan.
I didn't want to leave you guys for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about the Obi-Wan Kenobi show,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course next we'll discuss what's coming up next week
Mm.
and the week after. So we're going to jump right into it because I tried to look up some news. The only thing I could see was that Celebration tickets are on sale now by the time this episode's out.
Yeah.
At the time of recording, they will be out tomorrow, to give you an idea. So at the moment, I don't know if I got tickets.
Yeah. That's a problem.
It seems unlikely. Because I don't have the money right now, and knowing how Celebration tickets usually sell, they're going to be gone by the time I get the money. And I don't really feel like going into debt over Star Wars Celebration tickets.
Yeah.
I love Star Wars, and I want to go to another Celebration. I've only ever been to one, but I'm not going into debt over it.
Yep. Good policy. Don't go into debt over things.
So let's kind of we binge watched Obi-Wan Kenobi last night.
We watched all of it last night.
I had already seen it. I watched it as it was airing. But you waited.
Yeah.
So let's kind of jump right into it, I guess, and get into our review. This is going to be full spoilers.
Yes.
So just
spoiler warning. We're going to talk about a lot of things.
I guess before we go into full spoilers, do you want to give your thoughts to the audience as to whether or not they should watch it?
I think they should watch it.
I agree. Okay, so full spoilers. If you haven't watched it yet, you heard it from here.
Mm-hmm.
Go watch it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it. So episode 1 and 2, they aired on the first week, so I feel like we can discuss them as one episode.
The first scene is like Jedi hunt themselves.
No. The first scene is Order 66.
No, never mind.
and actually, before that, we get the little recap. That's because it gives. And I found it surprising that we got a recap for a show that just started, because usually you get recaps for the second episodes and not the first episodes of shows.
In case you forgot the prequels from 2005.
But it was a lovely recap. You know, it got all the highlights. Yeah. It got the parts that were necessary to the show. And so it brought back some emotions, because it's like, oh, we're going into this. But yeah, the very first scene is Order 66 on Coruscant from the perspective of some of the younglings.
Yeah.
So when this aired, see, when we rewatched it last night, you got to have the nice little warning in front of it that said, hey, this is going to have some serious shit in it.
Because I don't pay a lot of attention, since I'm very busy.
Like, you know things happen, but you don't.
I know.
But you don't
happen,
you kind of move on.
Yeah. Which is kind of selfish, I admit. I was confused. I'm like, why is there a content warning for Star Wars?
Order 66 happened, and then I explained why.
Oh.
Because
that's why.
Trigger warning, the Uvalde, Texas shooting happened the same week. And unfortunately, when this episode aired, it did not have that warning in front of it.
It was...
so it caught a lot of people off guard who were...
a case of poor timing.
Yeah, it caught a lot of people off guard. And it didn't catch everybody off guard. Like, some people are a little more able to handle that type of stuff. But for the people who, one, either were already kind of emotional about everything that was going on that week, or was impacted by it, it caught them.
Yeah.
Because it's a realistic scenario, and it gets more realistic when we get into later episodes when they show us that scene again from another perspective, and then that character's perspective talks about what they did to survive the killing in the Jedi Temple, and it gets a little realistic there, and you're like, oh, these are like stories we've heard of what people do in real life to survive these situations. and it got a little heavy. So, and Obi-Wan Kenobi wasn't the only show to have something like this in its show the week that happened. Spoiler warnings, Stranger Things premieres with a very similar thing happening for season 4. Very, very similar thing. And in fact, I'd argue a little bit closer to a real life type situation than, say, Star Wars. But they had their warning in front of theirs. I don't know why Disney forgot to do that, but they fixed it because when we watched it, it was in front of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, they didn't have this in front of it the first time. And then I waited till the scene happened before I explained the situation. But yeah, the very next scene, though, is we jump 10 years later, and we do the Jedi hunt themselves scene with Quizzy and fifth brother and third sister, a.k.a. Reva.
Yeah. Reva's too much.
But she's...
Even in
You know what, though? She is very... She's effective.
Yeah.
Because while Grand Inquisitor is giving his little speech about how Jedi hunt themselves because they're too compassionate, Reva's just like, why are we talking about it when we can just show them? And she throws a knife, and I know his name. I know the name of the Jedi. But the Jedi they're hunting basically proves Grand Inquisitor's speech correct. He's like, he saves the bartender, and then just as Reva's about to cut him down, Grand Inquisitor stops her, and he runs off.
He's like, nah, don't worry.
Not sticking around. And then they get into a little argument about how Reva's too focused on finding Kenobi because they're stuck with scraps because it's been 10 years now. They've managed to get most of the big Jedi.
What? Yeah.
At this point, it's all the small scraps and like younglings that are now in their teens and early adulthood, and less of the old Jedi Knight Nari. That's the name of the Jedi who got away.
So they're like.
So they're clashing on that ideal. And Reva's just like, we shouldn't be wasting our time. We should be hunting for the big guns. And Grand Inquisitor's like, nope, this is our job. Don't forget your station.
Yep. Stay in your lane, essentially.
Yep.
They're also, like, throughout, kind of, I'm trying to remember,
We'll get more into the Inquisitors. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay.
Let's talk about what Obi-Wan's been up to.
Obi-Wan has been working at
a food a meat factory. Yeah. Apparently, it is the meat of according to Wikipedia, although I don't know where they got the confirmation of it. It is the meat of a Nibre, which is like this. Almost looks like a bat thing. They're found in the. They're found on Tatooine and the Rishi Moons, and even in some of the even in space in the Kalida Nebula. They've been in Clone Wars and Rebels, and
I see.
Yeah.
And so every day, for some reason.
I mean, he's got to make money somehow.
Well, yeah. No, that's not what I'm about to talk about.
But yeah. So
he's always like, just cut off this little bit of meat.
Well, he's got to feed his
horse.
He's got to feed his Eopie. You know, feed your horse.
Yeah, you should.
He's a good owner of his horse.
He does look after it.
And I can't remember the name of it. I know somebody that I know will yell at me for it because they know the name, but there is a name for it. I can't remember.
Stayed alive longer than those banthas.
It's got 10 years on it because that's the same Eopie from the ending of Revenge of the Sith. When Obi-Wan delivers Luke to Owen and Beru.
Also, we discussed this, like, we had a brief discussion about like Obi-Wan living in a cave as opposed to a house.
Yeah, so he's living in a cave at the moment where he's befriended this Jawa named Tika, and that's part of where his money has to go because he gets parts for his dwelling from Tika as well as toys for Luke, specifically the T-16 Skyhopper that we see Luke play with in A New Hope, which Tika is amazing. I am definitely borrowing Tika for roleplay sessions because Tika is great.
They're very amusing. If you're going to
steal from me, at least clean the parts. That if you're going to steal from me and resell the parts, at least clean them. And it's like cleaning costs extra. But yeah, I mean, and so every night, Obi-Wan is trying to reach out to Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Because part of his training, he's supposed to be trying to reach out to Qui-Gon to learn how to communicate to his master.
Unfortunately, it's not working.
He also every night has PTSD dreams about everything that went down because who wouldn't in that scenario?
I think one of the coolest things I've ever said is, think about how you murdered your brother.
Yeah, because at this moment he thinks Anakin is dead. As far as he knows, Anakin died on Mustafar. But he does keep an eye on Luke from afar with his macro binoculars.
And this, I think he tried to go and give.
He leaves the Skyhopper somewhere where Luke can find it, but it's not yet that we talk about that. But he did leave it. And then on his way back to his home in a cave, he runs into Nari, who's like, "Hey, you're Obi-Wan Kenobi."
No, I'm not.
No, I'm Ben.
It's just Ben now.
It's just Ben. But you're a Jedi Master. What are we supposed to do?
Not.
Look,
we lost.
The only thing you can do now is go into hiding, take your lightsaber and bury it as far down into the sand as you can.
Throw that shit in the desert.
And then forget about it. It's the best thing you can do for yourself. Which Nari ignores that advice, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go to a Star Trek Federation world.
Yeah.
Alderaan. I joke that it looks like a Star Trek Federation world, but it does. But also, if any world in Star Wars was going to look like a Federation planet, it's Alderaan. Because Alderaan is definitely what I imagine would be the closest to a Utopia planet.
Yeah, it looks a lot better than the last time I saw it.
Or the first time that we see it ever in Star Wars. But yeah, I mean, well, the last time we saw it was, if we're going chronologically, was the end of Episode 3, when Breya and Belle are holding little baby Leia. And we get to see the nice mountains. But Alderaan and Naboo are the closest to utopian planets that I can think of. Naboo has more problems than Alderaan. Alderaan has some problems, but generally not too many.
Yeah, not to.
In the Old Republic era, there are plenty, but in the film eras, Alderaan is generally considered a well-meaning planet.
Yeah, they're on the nice end of town.
So they're holding a banquet because Breya's family is coming. Queen Breya's family is coming to the planet. And so they're like, okay, we got to get everybody organized, get Leia dressed up, make sure she's nice, make sure she doesn't say anything to upset anybody because we don't need cousins crying again.
This is the first instance of
Well, before that, we reveal that it's not even Leia that was in the outfit. Breya comes in, is ready to take Leia, and then they reveal that it's one of the handmaidens, and they're like, Leia thought you would think it was funny.
Your adopted daughter pranked you. She's like, okay, look,
she's got to be somewhere in the palace or in the woods.
She's either in the cellar,
the kitchen or in the woods. It's in the woods, and Breya amuses to the fact that she that Leia reminds her of somebody. Probably her mom. Because you didn't get to read the other Queen's books yet.
I did not.
Yeah, but they're on the list.
Okay.
But in one of them, Padme and Brea meet, and they're good friends after meeting. Because Brea isn't an elected queen. Alderaan is an actual monarchy.
Oh, so you inherit your position.
Yeah. Whereas Padme on Naboo is an actual election democracy. They just call their leaders queen or king. They're not quite an autocracy or anything.
An electoral monarchy.
Yeah, they're an electoral monarchy. So there's that. And so they kind of discuss in the books. They kind of discuss the differences between that type of leadership.
Yeah.
But going back to it, Brea finds Leia in the woods, where she's her and her droid Lola are guessing at what ships are leaving Alderaan and what could be in them. We got a medical frigate, a pleasure barge, a casino ship. Casino ship. Made me think of our tabletop game.
And
the Starforge 2, baby.
An Aquilian Ranger.
Yeah, an Aquilian Ranger, which she's like, oh, it's probably just a trading ship, but it could be scouting for merchant pirates. Which, of course, when Brea finds her and tells her that she's got to turn off her phone, Lola, for a little bit, for the rest of the day.
We had this.
Which we had the discussion. It's a little bit more than turning off your phone, but it's almost that equivalent. Like, it's not quite like you were like, it's like turning off your dog. It's like no, it's not quite that level. It's more like turning off your I just thought of this. It's more like turning off your what's it called? Your drone. It's more like turning off your drone camera. But yeah, so they go back, and of course, Bell kind of reprimands, but doesn't. He's like, "Oh, you saw merchant pirates, huh?" But yeah, back on Tatooine, Obi-Wan has gotten off from the workday again.
Yep.
Taken some more food for his horse.
Yep.
Only for Owen to come in and be like, "Hey. Don't leave toys for the kid.
Quit fucking around outside my house."
Yeah, so he brings back the T-16 Skyhopper and drops it at Obi-Wan's feet. And they have a little confrontation where Owen says the infamous line from the trailer of Obi-Wan saying, "Hey, the boy needs to be trained like he trained his father."
Rub some salt in that wound.
Maybe some of that salt could go into the food. All that meat that they're keeping around on a desert planet. Like, that's got to dry up fast.
Oh, yeah. Do you like jerky? You fucking better. It's all you got.
So, anyways, he tells them to leave the homestead alone.
He needs to see more.
Yeah, needs to see more of the galaxy. Let him live a little.
No.
No, the whole point was for us to keep him out of the Empire's sight.
What part of keep him secret were you confused about?
Come on, you're supposed to be the Gandalf here. You're supposed to know to keep him secret and keep him safe.
Everyone's like, fine.
And just as they're kind of wrapping up and they're about to go their separate ways, Fifth Brother and Reva come in, immediately harassing the locals and going, "Where is Nari, this Jedi that we're looking for?"
Yeah.
Fifth Brother
have two different methods about
Fifth Brother is very much like, "You'll be rewarded if you tell us." Reva's like, "You'll be punished if you don't."
Actually, just to prove a point,
I'm gonna cut off this old lady's hand who spoke up against me.
Because fuck it, I guess.
Because the old lady makes a valid point. She's like, "Hey, the Empire isn't supposed to be operating here. This is Hutt territory." And Reva don't like that. So off with your hand. Because it's a Hutt world.
Yeah.
While the Hutts are under Imperial control, basically the agreement that the Hutts and Empire have are that we stay out of each other's ways.
Yeah.
We can do our illegal operations as long as it doesn't affect the Empire. And the Empire doesn't affect us.
That's it.
That's it. But apparently this is not how that's going in terms of the Inquisitors.
Yeah, no.
Apparently the Inquisitors can operate on Tatooine, so that is interesting. And then, of course, Reva takes an interest in Owen because she senses something about him. And she starts...
You like your family, Owen?
Have you seen a Jedi? He's like, no, they're vermin and I shoot vermin. That's going to come back later.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come back later in a good way, too.
Yeah.
That's going to get paid off. But yeah, so she threatens Owen a little bit and says, I'll come and kill your family, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Owen does not.
He just is like...
He is defiant.
He sighs about it. Like, he's more annoyed at the prospect of having to do that.
Yeah.
He's not scared.
No.
But it's kind of framed that way.
But he's not. And Reva knows he's not, and she's actually kind of impressed that he's not. And but then Fifth Brother comes in and is like, back off. We're leaving. Obviously, the Jedi's not here.
Yeah.
Stop your stupidity.
Stop.
And they get
Stop swinging on people.
And so they get into an argument.
Like, no reason.
They get into an argument basically about how Reva is trying to go once again beyond her station.
Yeah.
And that
essentially
she's obviously doing this to move her way up the ladder, the corporate ladder.
Yeah.
Like, obviously she wants a promotion. And everybody can sense it, and they're like, you're working too hard to do this. Nobody's going to respect you if you keep this up.
You're going too hard, too fast.
And then, of course, he says, you're just as good at, like, you're... The whole gutter line, like, we found you in the gutter, and that's about as good as you're worth.
It's never going to wash off.
Like, that's your worth.
Yeah.
And then Obi-Wan thanks Owen for not revealing his presence, and Owen's like, I didn't do it for you. He did it for the kid. Because Owen's a good father. He is.
Yeah. We don't get to see much of him in the
But no, trilogy. I mean, and you can argue that, oh, well, he was so strict on him in episode 4, because he had to be. Also, like, Luke was whining about going to Tachi Station to pick up power converters. No, he wanted to slack off and goof off with his friends and, do spice and whatever kids do.
Do you remember what else is currently going on at that point in time?
Well, also during that time, the
Galactic Civil War is in full fucking swing.
Which is also why Owen won't let him leave the farm, because he's like, I want to join the academy.
Like, no, son, I don't want you to get shot.
1, I don't want you joining the Empire,
because they're not great.
2, you might die. Or 3, even worse, they'll discover you're Force sensitive and that your last name is Skywalker, and then it's all everything we've done is
fucking problem.
Yeah, then everything we've done to protect you is thrown out the window.
So, no.
Yeah. So we go back to Alderaan. Bail Organa and Brea are hosting their party.
Yeah.
We meet some of the family. They're not great.
No.
The aunt and uncle are kind of Brea's. I don't know if it's her sister or her brother, how the relationship is. But Leia's aunt and uncle are kind of like, we're not here because we care about the politics. We just wanted the food. We don't really care about the politics. And then their son is not much better. Their son, in fact, is a rude piece of shit. Because Leia thanks her droid for bringing the food. And Cousin immediately starts shit and is like, oh, you think you're droids? She's like, yeah, because that's the polite thing to do. That's the civil thing. And he's like, oh, we don't have to thank beings that are lower than us. And she's like, well, that's just rude. And then she goes into him really good.
Even my distaste for droids is not that much. It's not to the point of, like, calling them a lower being.
Yeah. And so she goes into him and is like, hey, look, you're just scared of your dad and you just repeat everything he says because you're scared of him. And you're probably not going to be worth anything when you get older because you're probably still going to just be scared of whoever's in charge of you and do exactly what they say and not accomplish anything of worth.
She goes so hard on him.
To the point that he cries.
He cried.
That's why Belle and Brea get onto Leia about it. Because they say that he cried because of this. And it's not her first time making her cousins cry, because they say earlier
it's something that she's apparently done in the past.
I mean, but to be fair, that side of the family is
They're
not great. They're not great. They don't care about the Imperial Senate, which is dying. It's not dead yet, but it is dying, because we know by the time of Episode 4, they dissolved the Senate, giving Palpatine 100% power. Right now, we got 10 years until that. We got 9 years until that happens. So, because that happens at the start of A New Hope, they're like, "Oh yeah, we just dissolved the Senate." So things are leaning in a not great way. And so of course, Brea gets onto her and it's like that you can't be you got to be above them. You can't be doing that.
Yeah.
Like, you were right, but you got to go about it a different way. And that's also what Bell basically says once Brea leaves, because Bell also gives a softer talking to, and he's like, "I used to be like you. I used to want to, do wild things and chase after space whales." And,
I get it.
But then I got older. My adventuring days kind of slowed down, and I married your mom and adopted you. And I learned that I could do more in the Senate, and that you're about to join the Junior Senate. And so you'll learn your ways too.
Junior Senate?
Yeah, there's a Junior Senate.
Where the fuck is there a Junior Senate?
It's basically like it's more like a camp thing. It's called apprentice legislature. It's basically to it's for people that are interested in politics.
I see. Okay.
Never. So it lets them and usually they're kids of already existing senators usually that are part of these programs. Sometimes it'll be somebody that's not, but usually it's kids that are already.
I see. Okay.
And so Leia's like, "Well, I'm not interested in being a senator." And he's like, "Well, that's why you're going to be great at it."
Yeah.
Because you already know the right thing to do, and you just got to find the correct way to do it. Now go ahead and apologize to your cousin, and I'll see you back at dinner. That is not what she does.
Nope. She's like,
she goes back into the woods.
Back to the woods.
And gets kidnapped.
Yep. Great.
By the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Flea. Flea finds her along with his alien buddies.
Yeah.
And so they kill a couple Alderaanian guards who she almost gets help from, and then she ends up getting kidnapped.
Yeah.
And then Bell and Brea immediately call Obi-Wan, who's on Tatooine, and they're like, "Hey, help us, because you're our only hope." And he's like, "I can't leave Tatooine. I'm supposed to watch the kid.
I have to watch Luke."
And they're like, "Yeah, but Luke's not the only one you're supposed to be protecting. You're supposed to protect both."
Essentially, he goes, "No, that was your job."
And they're like, "No, you're supposed to protect both, but okay." And he hangs up on them. And then the next day, after another day of work, he sees Nari dead and being hung in front of everybody. And then returns home, only for Bell to be there and be like, "Look, motherfucker, you're going to get you're going to find my daughter. Because that's your job."
He's like, "It's been 10 years, man."
He's like, "Look, you got to get over your failure with Anakin. There was nothing you could do about it, but you can still do something about Leia." And he's like, "Well, what if I fail again?" And he's like, "Well, that's just the cost of trying. So go." And so, meanwhile, back on the ship with Flea and Leia, Leia tries to get some help by using her droid Lola, only for Flea to break it.
Yep. Dick.
Then on Tatooine, Obi-Wan gets his lightsabers from out of the sand and makes his way.
Like, all right.
Yeah, because his and Anakin's lightsabers are both buried together in the sand. But he takes his, and he goes onto a ship to go save Leia. Meanwhile, we learn that the bounty hunters who stole Leia, or the mercenaries who stole Leia, are working for Reva, and they're on their way to Daiyu. Because Reva has
She's like, I got a plan.
She's got a plan, and we learn about it in episode 2. So let's just go ahead and jump into what that plan is, because we're just going to jump right into it.
So the plan
is to draw Obi-Wan out, because she found in some files that there was a connection between Bell and Obi-Wan in the archives. That is a question that a lot of people had of like, how does she know this? And it's in episode 2. They explain it. She tells Grand Inquisitor
she's been looking through the like cold case files.
Yeah, she looks because she explains it to Grand Inquisitor later on in this in part 2, where he's like, "Why'd you kidnap an Imperial Senator's daughter, you idiot?" And she's like, "Because there's a connection between her and the Jedi I'm hunting."
Yeah, why'd you cause this massive, like, political scandal?
Well, it's not even public, though, so that's, like, Bell got Obi-Wan involved to keep it private, and Reva is counting on that.
Oh, yeah, by the way, Leia's over here like, my father will send an army, and my response is, nah, he's just gonna send one guy.
Yeah, I mean, sending an army would draw too much attention, and it would create a bigger issue than anything, and it would give Palpatine ammunition to use against Bell in the Senate. Because then Palpatine could just say, "Oh, look at this. His daughter was being held for some whatever charge, and then in response, you sent an army. You must be a rebel. You must be going against the Empire's rules." And that's how that would go down if Bell had sent an army. It wouldn't look good. And Bell knows this. He knows that Palpatine would use whatever ammunition he gives him. So, just send the Jedi.
Yep.
And keep it hush-hush.
And so begins Obi-Wan's time
on the Milk World.
Searching for Leia on Daiyu.
Yeah, so on Daiyu, we come across a few things. We see a homeless 501st Legion clone who reminds us of the real-world veterans that we see every now and then, and how the system kind of discards them.
Yeah.
Which I saw one of my friends on Discord sent just as we were finishing that scene, sent a picture with a thing talking about how that's how you know the difference between Anakin and Vader. Anakin would never let a 501st clone ever end up in that type of situation, whereas Vader would be willing to just throw them away like that. Because for Anakin, the 501st were his brothers.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan gives the clone some money, because probably the only good person on Daiyu that's ever done that for that clone, by the way.
Probably.
I'm surprised that didn't get him noticed by anybody, because when I was watching that scene the first time, I was like, oh god, is he gonna give that clone money? Oh god, is he gonna get noticed because that's a good deed on a world that's obviously not filled with good people? Because once again, it goes to that speech in part 1 of the Jedi hunt themselves by doing compassionate things.
The amount of concern I had in that moment was like, he's been here 3 minutes,
and he's immediately gonna get himself.
No, I was like, we had a very similar situation. This is a weird comparison to make. During our tabletop game.
Yeah.
Where I remember there were 2 guys that immediately rushed me as I was getting off the ship, and I'm like, I've been here for 2 minutes. They're not.
Oh yeah, the bounty hunter thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just stepped out of the way.
Yeah. And then Obi-Wan is approached by a pink-haired girl who offers him some drugs and basically says, "Look, your daughter's gone if she's here, because everybody was once somebody's daughter. I was somebody's daughter, and now here I am selling you drugs." Which hurts even more when you realize that she's being played by Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan Kenobi's daughter.
Yeah. Doesn't hurt. It's
just funny. It hurts in an ironic way.
Yeah. And so he's like, all right, look.
And so then this other kid comes up to him and is like, hey, I know of a Jedi that could help you. And we meet Haja. So Haja is helping a woman and her son Corrin, and basically uses the Force to get them transport to Corellia.
Yeah.
Our favorite place. But it's fine because this is a little Easter egg for Cornhorn, Legends character who is now being brought into canon.
Hmm.
And it turns out that, of course, so he has the woman in pay for some credits to get her the way off, and he's like, "All right, go to your ship. You'll have safe transport." Obi-Wan watched this happen and walks in and is like, "Hey, so I heard you're a Jedi. You willing to help me find my daughter?" And Hodge is like, "Well, 500 to locate her, another 300 to take you to her." And he's like, and Obi-Wan comments how expensive that is, and Hodge is like, "Well, we Jedi have to hide in the dark now. It's dangerous.
It's very unforgiving."
And he's like, "I could show you some tricks though for 1,000." And that's when Obi-Wan's like, "Okay, that's it. Tricks up." He pulls out a gun on him, and he's like, "Look, I know you're not a Jedi. You got remotes and magnets," which I've used that trick in some tabletop games. Dustle.
Yeah.
So
why don't you actually tell me where I should start looking?
Yeah, and so he's like, "Look, I can tell you where to go." And so they kind of go. He leads them to basically this drug lab.
Yeah.
And so
we both looked and we're like, "That's a drug lab."
Yeah, no, that's a drug lab. That's your spice lab. That's your looks almost like a meth lab. Like I made the joke when we were watching Obi-Wan's Breaking Bad. So then he gets into a fight with some guards as he goes to where the prison cells are. He's
having a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, that age is showing.
He still manages to handle them.
And so he manages to find this a cell, opens it, turns out it's a decoy where then Flea comes out behind him and is like, "Ha, we got you, you Jedi. That was easy." And they drug him a little bit. But then Obi-Wan fights them and tricks them into being hit with their own.
He drugs them a lot.
Yeah, he drugs them more, and they get caught up in their own spice.
They're like, "Yeah, man."
And so then he goes to the next cell where he does find Leia, who kicks him in the shin immediately. Because Leia is really smart, and she knows, like, "Hey, I probably shouldn't trust you yet because I don't know who you are."
Yeah, the discussion we had was like, in any other situation, this would be
like literally everything Leia does in this episode would be the right thing to do, but because of this particular situation,
it's not.
It's not.
And so
they go ahead and start to make their way out.
Your father sent me.
Yeah, and he explains what's going on. He's like, and she's like, "Well, where's the army?" He's like, "Just sent me. Just me." And they, as they're exiting, he explains that he's a Jedi, and because she keeps starting a ruckus, and he's like, "Look, I'm a Jedi. We got to keep on the DL here. We can't be doing all this."
All right, kid, listen. I need you to stop.
Take it from here and bring it to here.
And she's like,
"No." She's like, "No. Can you make me fly?" And he's like, "No, that will draw attention." And so he gets some disguises. Meanwhile, Reva wakes up the mercenaries, and is like,
"Where is he?
Come on, you gotta get back to finding him. Chop chop." And unfortunately for her, that's also when Grand Inquisitor, Fifth Brother, and Fourth Sister arrive, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing kidnapping an Imperial Senator's daughter? We're gonna take this investigation from here."
He's like, "You're off the case."
Yeah. And she's like, "Well, fine. I'll just let every bounty hunter on the planet know that Obi-Wan Kenobi's here."
Yep.
And she's not expecting them to capture him, but she's like, they'll draw him out.
She's like, just make him desperate.
Yeah. And so Obi-Wan's like, "Look, here's our story. You're my daughter. We're farmers from Tall. That's it. Let's get out of here." And trying to keep a low profile doesn't quite work because, once again, 10-year-old who's acting up a little bit.
Yeah.
They manage to get into alleyway where he immediately punches another bounty hunter in the face.
That's just uppercutted immediately.
And unfortunately, though, Leia sees a hologram that has the bounty hunter notification of that they're looking for him, and she thinks, "Oh, you're a criminal too. You're just trying to kidnap me more. You're the reason I probably got kidnapped in the first place." And so she starts running away from him.
You're trying to kidnap me more.
I mean, that's essentially what.
Yeah.
And so off she runs once again. Any other situation, correct choice, little girl, to run away from the stranger who claims to be a friend of the family.
Yeah. In this moment, however,
not so much.
Obi-Wan's like, fuck.
He's like, stop running. Meanwhile, having to shoot and fight every bounty hunter he comes across now.
Because
they're like, oh, there's the Jedi.
Get him!
Yeah. They're like, there's the Jedi, and there's the kid. And so they eventually make theirs running to the roof, where one Jack, the bounty hunter that looks like for LOM.
Ah, that's his name?
Yeah, that's one Jack.
All right.
So they along with some other bounty hunters chase him, and Reva manages to get up to the roof as well, showing off her jumping skills and her parkour. She's doing some hardcore parkour there. Hardcore parkour.
Obi-Wan's over here.
Like,
firing
he's just
away.
running. He can't do no hardcore parkour.
Yeah, he's like, no, I'm too old for this.
And he eventually gets cornered.
Yeah.
And then Haja comes in, kind of helps him out a little bit.
Leia decides
but Leia
jump off a roof.
Leia jumps, thinking she can. I think she thinks she can make it to the other side, but unfortunately she does not. No. She manages to get caught on a little wire though, and she's like, "Help me, Ben!" And Ben, who's been out of Force shape for 10 years, manages to catch her at the last second. But you could see the strain on him.
Yeah.
He even did the Grogu Force usage, where he closed his eyes first because it was too much. That's how you know you're straining yourself when using the Force, if you close your eyes when you do it. And so, saves her. Haja comes in and is like, look, I'm going to help you guys out because I realized my mistake.
Yeah.
I'm actually a pretty good guy. I just charge people. Look.
Yeah.
I got to make money somehow.
He's like, I like money and being alive.
But I can also help you, so I'm going to help you get off-world and get you back where you need to go. You're going to go to Mapuzo and escape there and meet with one of my contacts. But then after that, he shoots one Jack, like, who's already on the ground.
As they were sneaking up, and then on the way back, he
shoots him again. Well, double tap. The rule of double tap. Haja also decides to turn himself into a distraction for Reva.
Yeah.
As Obi-Wan and Leia make their way to the spaceport.
Reva meets him, and he meets Reva, and he's like, I'm a real Jedi.
You must be looking for me. What's my bounty now? Is it 2 million, 3 million credits?
And Reva's
like, you're not a Jedi.
She's like, who are you?
Like, she's more annoyed than frustrated or anything else. She's just like, what? I think she's actually more confused than anything.
She's like, what are you doing?
And so she's like, well, obviously you're helping the Jedi, so you must have information. So she just extracts it from his brain.
Yeah. You know
that Force thing to do.
Yeah.
And so
that thing I don't like.
Yeah. And so they manage to make their way to the space station, where we have a little moment where Obi-Wan kind of sees Padme and Leia, and he comments on it, and he tells her about Padme a little bit, but is like very vague on it.
Yeah.
And he's like, you remind me of my friend. Oh, were they a Jedi too? Well, no, they were a leader, and they're dead. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, they died a long time ago.
Me too.
Yeah. And so they
Me too.
So they have their little moment, and then Reva catches up, and she's like, hey, Obi-Wan, like horror film.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan, come out and play. And she's just like, oh, by the way, Vader wants to see you. Anakin is still alive. And Obi-Wan's like, oh, shit. And starts to immediately have he starts to immediately be triggered by that. Like, his PTSD goes into high gear when she says that. To the point that she's about to catch him Like, she's literally about to capture Obi-Wan, and then Grand Inquisitor comes in.
He's like, what the fuck are you doing?
I'm gonna capture Obi-Wan. You're not getting any credit for this. You're a gutter rat. Get out of the way. And she's like,
oh yeah?
Yeah, she's like, well, at first she's like, okay. Not. Stabs him in the gut.
Yeah. And this was a weird discussion. I was like, isn't...
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute. Does that mean Rebels is not canon? I literally just...
was like, well,
I literally just had that discussion too today, where somebody who hasn't watched all the episodes yet, they were like, does that... So Rebels may or may not be in canon anymore. I'm like, it is. And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, just watch the rest of the episodes.
And I'm like, well, people have survived lightsaber. You have to try really hard.
Yeah, we discussed that.
Kill someone with a lightsaber.
Yeah, like we discussed like the just dying in general in Star Wars is really hard, especially for Force users, but just in general.
You have to really try to kill people.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a name in Star Wars, you're almost...
Well, Grand Inquisitor doesn't have a name. He's just Grand Inquisitor. We don't actually know his name. He's the only Inquisitor that... Yeah, he's one of the few Inquisitors that we don't know a name for. We also don't know Fifth Brothers or Fourth Sisters or... But a lot of... There's a few that we do know the names of.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So, he gets stabbed. And then, but it also gives this bickering gives Obi-Wan and Leia time to get on their ship and start to fly away.
Yeah.
Reva threatens them and is like, "You can't escape. We're gonna find you." And immediately,
actually, he's doing a pretty good job so far.
Yeah. But Obi-Wan and Vader start to have a little Force bond moment where Obi-Wan is thinking about him, and Vader's like, "Oh, you're out there. Oh boy, time to hunt you."
Oh, I'm gonna kill you so bad.
So yeah, so we jump episode 3. We jump to Mustafar where Vader is getting informed by Third Sister what happened and is like, "Hey, you could potentially be promoted to Grand Inquisitor if you find Obi-Wan and deal with it."
Yeah.
So
just don't fuck up.
Yeah, don't fuck up. So Obi-Wan and Leia, meanwhile, are on Mapuzo now, where they are still keeping up their Farmers from Tall act, with some fake names to go along with it. I forget his name, but her name is Luma.
Yeah, Luma.
That's the important one, really.
I think it's still Ben.
No, he's going by a different name.
D?
Yeah, he is. Because she mentions it, and I forget what it was. But anyways, Luma's the one that's important to remember. Because that comes up. So they go to where Haja told them to go, and they're like,
no one's here.
No one's here. Also, Obi-Wan is having snaps, like little snaps of visions of Anakin Skywalker a la Passion of the Christ, where like Anakin is looking like the devil in Passion of the, like Satan in Passion of the Christ, where he's just hanging out with the hood, his skin all pale and everything, and you're just like, ugh.
I wasn't like that since I haven't seen that. I looked at it and was like, the fuck is that?
Let me pull it up, actually. I'll pull it up for everybody. I mean, just looking at that right now, how can you tell me that's not exactly how he looked? Like, there it is. Like... That's how Anakin was looking.
I was more confused
when I made that reference.
Yeah.
But now it makes sense.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah. Because throughout Passion of the Christ, and Jesus is having visions of Satan following him, similar to how Obi-Wan was having that vision of Anakin in that moment. So yeah. So, like, it's... So yeah, it's not great for Obi-Wan, and also he's not trusting anybody at the moment because he's like, why should we trust him? He's a thief. He's a liar. Why should we trust this guy? And Leia's like, we don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
And not all, and she's like, and plus, come on, why not? And he's like, not all people are good, Leia. Which, that speaks more to his trauma regarding Anakin and stuff, but because that's really where that line is coming from. Meanwhile, back in Fortress Inquisitorius on Noor, third sister is kind of taking charge and is like, look, we've sent some probe droids out to find Obi-Wan. We know he's on one of the mining worlds because we took the ship's logs and we know where it was going.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, fifth brother is like, why are you in charge? I'm the next in line. And she's like, well, I spoke to Vader, and are you going to argue with Vader? And so he's like, well, fuck. So back on Mapuzo, Leia waves down a ship, or a vehicle rather, being driven by an alien named Freck, who definitely loves the Empire. He's definitely a mega make the Empire great again. Like, you can see him with the red hat and everything. I'm calling out everybody today, aren't I?
Yeah.
But yeah, so he lets them on board, though, because he thinks they're good Imperial citizens. Imperial-loving citizens, and he lets them on board. Orden is Obi-Wan's fake name. So Luma and Orden.
All right.
Leia's doing most of the talking, even though Obi-Wan told her that he'd do most of the talking. So she's like, I'm Luma, this is my dad, Orden.
He took me out to this place
because where he met my mom, because my mom's dead now.
Yeah.
So, And so Freck's like, it's good to take your kid out on these things and respect the Empire and show everything, like, man. And so he picks up a few more stormtroopers, a few stormtroopers that are looking for the Jedi, and apparently he gives these stormtroopers rides often because they're like on a first name basis. They're like, "Hey, Freck, how you doing?"
He's like, just making the trip back to port.
Come on board. You need a ride?
And they're like, sure.
And so they take their ride, and they start to question Orden, and they're like, "Oh, what
y'all doing out here?"
And so they give the story, and then he accidentally drops the name Leia, and they're like, "Wait a minute, didn't you say her name was Luma?"
And then
he's like, "Oh, Leia's her mother's name."
Sorry.
I see a lot of her mother and her. Yeah, I get confused. I'm an old man who's sad now, and I see a lot of her mother when I look at her.
Single parent,
doing the best I can. And the stormtroopers are just like, well, that's awkward. We're just not going to ask any more questions.
They're like,
in fact, we're going to get off here.
Like, God damn it, we made the old man sad. We better leave.
In fact, we're just going to get off here. We're good. Thank you, Freck. And so Freck's like, okay, well, I'm going to continue into the port where they got to do a little checkpoint.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, this...
And, yeah, so checkpoint doesn't go well. Obi-Wan kills all the stormtroopers. One of them being cut in half by the border.
At first, I was like, why is the thing like that? Also, I'm pretty sure if you're like a person, you can just go around it.
Yeah.
That man gets he gets cut in half.
Yeah, he got cut in half.
And I'm like, shit, okay, that's how that works.
Yeah, and so then we get but thankfully Freck is only put unconscious, which is good because now we can have the reintroduction of Freck and Hype Phazon from Resistance and get our Scrubs reunion, some Team Guy love, because Freck is voiced by Zach Braff, the main guy in Scrubs. Okay. And then in Resistance we got another character from Scrubs, Donald Faison plays Hype Phazon. He got a character named after him. Although they'd be on two different ends of the political spectrum. Hype Phazon's a little bit more, a little bit less on the Empire and First Order being good. So they'd have to work out their differences, but that would make a good show. Also, it'd be like set way later in the timeline because, and Freck would be a lot older. Anyways,
that's a weird thing.
Yeah.
So the Empire goes off of enlistment mostly, right?
At this moment, yes.
At this moment.
Yeah, because they started, they did start with the clones, but then they very quickly phased out of it. Like within the first year of the Empire's existence, they phased out of clones.
And then you've got the First Order, who are like, let's kidnap children.
Yep. Well, because certain members of the Empire figured that enlistment didn't make the soldiers as loyal, and they figured, oh, they're not as loyal because we didn't indoctrinate them long enough. In other words, and so what if we kidnap children and indoctrinate them from birth?
Oh boy.
But also we avoid the issues of cloning because clones also have because clones can start to develop their own emotions and stuff if we just hope for cloning to work.
Yeah.
Anyways, speaking of stormtroopers, more stormtroopers confront Obi-Wan along with an officer and a Viper probe droid that sees them. The officer turns out to be part of a resistance movement or a rebel movement rather, within the planet of Mapuzo, and shoots all the stormtroopers and the Viper probe droid, and they start to make...
Probe droid's already been shot.
Oh yeah, probe droid's been shot.
Actually, that's what starts...
Oh yeah, that's what starts that fight.
Yeah.
Because, Obi-Wan shoots it, or...
Obi-Wan does shoot it.
Yeah, Obi-Wan shoots it, and so then she has to shoot the stormtroopers.
Yeah,
and so
they're reinforcements because they go and they ask.
Yeah. And so... Now the Inquisitors know where Obi-Wan is, though, because he shot that probe droid. Meanwhile, Tala, the name of the officer, is like, "Hey, I'm with I'm a rebel. I'm not a bad guy. I'm with Haja. I'm the person you were supposed to meet. You weren't at the location we were supposed to meet at."
Yeah, this is harder to... Made my job harder, asshole.
But look, let's get going. So she leads them to a place where they can hide away while she works out a way for them to get to the spaceport. Turns out a lot of Jedi have gone through this way, and this is a rebel movement called the Path. And we get a mention of Quinlan Voss as having gone through this particular stop, because all the Jedi have written their names in Aurebesh on the wall. We also get some mentions of a few Legends characters' names that are written, as well as Caleb Doom, a.k.a. Kanan Jarrus from Rebels. So we get that little Easter egg. Really, if you watch that episode and pause it and look through all the names, you get a fun little Easter eggs list. And we get another one in episode 5, because they have another list of names on the wall.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, we got to get to Alderaan. So Tala eventually manages to set up transport, but not in time for Vader to find them.
Yeah.
Vader happens to find them and is torturing the village in order to draw Obi-Wan out. In fact, murders a child in front of his mom. He just snaps the kid's neck. So to anybody that says Obi-Wan, that Disney has not made Vader intimidating, rewatch this episode.
He's dragging people through the streets, killing children.
Like, I've heard people say, oh, Disney's made Vader soft and weak, and it's like, are we talking about the same Vader?
Soft and weak is not something I would describe Vader as.
For real.
Limbless, maybe. Soft and weak, no.
So Obi-Wan's like, look, I'll lead him out. I'll distract him. You guys get to the ship. So then we get the pre-match to the big WWE rematch. And it's basically just Obi-Wan getting dragged. Because, like, he doesn't... Once again, 10 years of not being in practice with the Force or lightsaber combat versus Vader, who has been constantly in lightsaber combat and using the Force by hunting down other Jedi like Obi-Wan.
Vader...
and then Vader, they eventually make it to this part of the mining system. They make it to the quarry, where Vader lights up the quarry a bit and starts a fire, and then drags Obi-Wan through it.
Yeah, he rakes him through the coals.
And it's just kind of like, oh, you burned me last time, so now I burn you. And also, like, before that, Obi-Wan's like, what have you become? And Vader's like, what you made me. And it's one of those lines that really stuck with people. Like, that was the line that stuck with people.
Ow.
And it sticks with Obi-Wan. So Tala eventually is like, look, Leia, you got to keep going. I'll go back and get Obi-Wan, because Leia's kind of worried about Obi-Wan. And she's like, fine, I'll go get him. You keep going.
Yeah.
So she goes and doubles back to help Obi-Wan. Meanwhile, Reva kind of finds the path and is like, I wonder where they're going. Probably to the spaceport, because that's the logical solution. That's why she ends up there before Leia.
So one of the
because that's a question that came up a lot for that episode was like, how did Reva get ahead of Leia? It's like because she probably doubled back and went to the logical solution of where that tunnel leads.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed, just kind of like observing, Vader fight over the years, you can tell when he's not taking a fight too seriously because he'll only use one.
He'll single-hand it. Yep, which is what he did in this.
Yeah.
The amount of disrespect,
like it's bad.
But yeah, so just as Vader's about to like kind of end it a little bit, Tala comes in and shoots and starts to distract him, and manages to and then
who was not clone. That stormtrooper who went to go and pick Obi-Wan up.
Oh yeah, but Ned B saves Obi-Wan along with Tala, which we forgot to talk about Ned B, who like when the stormtroopers first come looking for them in the building that they're hiding in, Ned B's there because they have like a back passage and Ned B's in the main room.
Essentially, they have like a secret room.
Yeah, they have a secret room, and Ned B's in the main room, and he's got his hammer and he's ready. Because he's a loader droid, loader droids can't talk. They're not, or at least they're not programmed to. You can reprogram them to talk, but Ned B is not reprogrammed to do so. But he's got a hammer behind his back, and he's ready to beat these stormtroopers up if it came to it.
Tell us like sometimes actions speak louder than words.
And it's just like, yep. So, unfortunately, though, even though they managed to save Obi-Wan, Reva kidnaps Leia and takes her back to Nur.
She basically is like, I've captured the child again.
This will draw you out again. And so, yeah. So we hit episode 4.
Yeah.
Where they have to come. They get to Jabim where Obi-Wan is healing in the bacta tank, but also getting into like a force battle with Vader as they're both in the bacta tanks.
Yeah.
And then Obi-Wan wakes up and is like, all right, where am I? What's going on? Tala explains that they're on Jabim. You're safe. We'll figure out what to do next step. And he's like, nope, we're figuring out now. We got to save Leia. And so we meet O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ice Cube's son, playing Roken, who's a member of the Path movement. And they're like, look, nobody has been stupid enough to break into Fortress Inquisitorius. Tell that to Jedi Fallen Order. Yeah, I'm that stupid. As Cal, anyways. As Cal Kestis, I'm that stupid.
Essentially, it's like, who in their right mind
would break into a place that's surrounded by dark side Force users who their whole existence is to hunt down Jedi?
Yeah. This seems like a bad idea.
Yeah. So they decide to break in anyways, though, after some coercing, because Roken's a little more difficult to talk into it, but he kind of rethinks everything, and he's like, well, I joined this movement because my wife was a Jedi, and I've seen what Inquisitors do. Okay, I'm in.
Yeah. So
they break in with the plan being that Tala's going to continue her role as a officer and kind of walk in straight forward while Obi-Wan will go in the back entrance once she's unlocked it.
Yeah.
And so that's the plan, and that everything's going according to plan with everybody using the T-47 airspeeders to get there.
Yeah.
We also have a few of the Path members, Sully, and a few other members flying along with Roken.
On the way there, a little bit of a rewind.
Yeah. Reva's interrogating Leia.
Yes, also, but before that, Obi-Wan has fixed Lila.
Oh yeah, Obi-Wan fixed Lila.
An addition.
That was in part 3.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But on the ride there, he's also like practicing using the Force just a little bit
and trying to reach out to Qui-Gon again.
Yeah. He's still having some trouble with it.
Yeah, Leia has Lola with her at the moment. That's important, actually. So, yeah. Reva is interrogating Leia and is like, "Hey, Obi-Wan's dead. I saw him burn, and the Path members left him to die. You should tell me where they are." And Leia, already proving her ability to be part of the rebellion, is like, "Nope, I don't believe you, and I'm not saying a word."
Mm-hmm.
To the point that Reva's just like, "Look, you're gonna tell me," and she takes Lola away from Leia,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll talk about what she did to Lola afterwards, because we don't know it's what happened yet.
She's like, I had a droid like this once when I was a child.
Yep. And so she basically tries to fill Leia's head with the idea that the Jedi Order and the Path are basically abandoning her because they don't care. Because Reva feels this sense of abandonment from the Jedi Order herself. Something we'll go into when we get to part 5. And so Reva's like, well, if I can't talk you into telling me what's going on, I'm going to torture you.
Yep. And we had this discussion where it was like, so just to remind people how bad the Empire like actually is, we've gotten down to child torture.
Yeah. And so like it's a step along with the child murder, which was great timing of you bringing that up, because so Obi-Wan manages to break in after Tala convinces this officer that she's here to tell the Inquisitors what's going on, and that if she's not allowed to go in, that the Grand Inquisitor will be pissed off.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, I don't want to do that.
It's like,
So she unlocks the door to let Obi-Wan in. Obi-Wan finds his way in through the back way. He kind of sneaks through. Tala has to deal with some stormtroopers who are like, hey, you're not supposed to be here, a couple times. And so
it's fine, I had to deal with something.
And so Obi-Wan eventually makes his way through to where he finds what might be the darkest thing inside of Fortress Inquisitorius.
Oh yeah, the Amber Room.
Yeah, the Amber Room of just Jedi that were killed, put into Amber.
We made all your friends a fucking art piece.
Yeah, and so there's a Jedi from the Clone Wars. That's the first one we see. His name, Terrace Anube. It's the old man one that has the cane lightsaber. Yeah, he's the first guy we see in that. And so it's just like, oh, Terrace Anube's dead. I guess he didn't trick them with his cane saber that time. Oh,
that
man.
trick only works once.
But no, your comment about the torturing kids making the Empire evil, and I was like, yeah, but that's like a scale after the murdering children, so like that tracks. And as I said, that's when we saw the Jedi Padawan in Amber, or the youngling in Amber,
like
helmet and all. Like he still had the helmet on.
I'm like, well, this is some unfortunate timing.
Yeah. And so as Obi-Wan's getting closer, Reva's like, okay, or Tala's like, I need to distract Reva.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say that I'm here to talk to Reva.
Yep.
And so Reva's like, God damn it, I was about to torture a child.
She's like, what is it? What do you want?
Well, I know where the path is.
You do.
It's in Florum.
You're lying.
The pirate world. It's totally on Florum.
I don't know if you're lying to me
or for me.
For me.
Because she's like, you're a spy, and Tala's like, well, duh, I've been spying for you guys against the path.
And essentially, it's like, is this bluff gonna work?
Yeah.
The answer is, unfortunately...
I mean, it works as much as it needs to.
Yeah.
Like, Obi-Wan manages to... Yeah, long enough for Obi-Wan to break into where Leia's being held. Ninja kill some stormtroopers in the dark.
Yeah. That one stormtrooper. Stay where you are.
But yeah, Obi-Wan's busy recreating what's the name of that video game? The Tom Clancy guy.
Which one?
The one that has the headgear. Splinter Cell.
Yeah.
Like, Obi-Wan's busy recreating Splinter Cell.
He's being Sam Fisher.
Yeah, just a little bit. And so he saves him, saves Leia, and they start to make their way out. Obi-Wan disguises himself in a coat to look like an officer. It's a long coat, so he's able to hide Leia under it. And Tala quickly leaves as well after confronting some stormtroopers. With
the coat and the hat. He does, and because Ewan McGregor looks a lot older now, he actually does look like a really old officer.
Yeah.
He's able to pull it off pretty well.
Yeah, and
except for the fact that Reva knows, like, nobody else questions, and they almost get out of the door
without being noticed. And so Reva notices, and
after they fight through a little bit of it and flood a hallway.
Yeah, they flooded a hallway.
They installed doors.
Yeah.
Probably after
they
the
still
last
need
crazy
after the last crazy Jedi who decided to come through here, they had to reinstall new windows. They got new door systems. They're gonna have to get new windows. They really need to invest into something stronger.
Look, you guys.
I think they're using I don't know what kind of glass material they're using.
You would have to use tempered glass, but you might need to
reinforce. You might want to get some extra layers.
Yeah. Or you could.
You could probably add. You could do some tempered glass, but you could probably add some layers of plexiglass underneath to kind of really support it. That would probably help.
Yeah. Or maybe just don't have windows.
That would also be a good idea.
It's like, why do
why do you? Why?
Spaceships?
Well, because it's nice, it's beautiful in space, but also, in the case of the Empire, why would you put windows in under the water? It's nice to see underwater, but the Empire doesn't care about aesthetics like that. The Death Star didn't have windows. Actually, that's not true. It had a couple. It had a couple windows.
It had a few windows, yeah.
But not too many.
Yeah.
It was in the main bridge area, the main command area, and then that's really...
Well, actually, no.
Well, they needed that so they could see what they were targeting.
Because this starts a big fucking gun.
You got it, yeah. Anyways, so they do manage to get away, but not at the cost. But before somebody can die from Reva throwing a bomb at their teeth at the speed. Wade.
One of the more boring but practical uses of the Force.
Yeah.
Just throw a bomb at the plane.
Yeah. And so they get away, though. And so they start to make their way back to Jabim.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've hit episode 5, where we start with a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a flashback we're going to be coming back to a lot in this episode, so we're just going to kind of talk about it now.
Yeah.
This flashback's amazing. And so up to this point, people were there were certain parts of the community that were bitching and moaning about not getting a flashback. And they more specifically, you're just killing that Death Trooper, aren't you? Don't kill the Death Trooper. Is he gonna survive?
No.
You might need to straighten up. Give him a little back support.
You're goofy as shit right now. Sorry, Mr. Trooper.
There you go. He just needed a better back support to...
He has fallen to my elbow like many others.
But yeah, it's... A lot of people were... Certain parts of the community were bitching and moaning that they weren't getting a flashback. Specifically, they wanted a Clone Wars one, but I think this one serves just as well.
Yeah.
And it serves better. But this kind of goes into the... When we're getting a weekly show, you can be upset about how the show is going, but to say, oh, it'll never do this thing, so it's obviously going to be terrible. We don't know that it's not going to do something, because the show's not over.
You have to wait until it's over.
And while you binge-watched it, I personally think that this lack of media literacy for weekly TV shows is the fault of binge-watching.
Probably.
Because now with binge-watching, you watch an entire show and you get everything all at once, and so people don't know how to have questions in a show without them being immediately answered. Like, they got to know everything. Like, they got to know, why is Reva acting this way? We'll find out. Well, can't I know it now? because it's a weekly show. But I deserve to know it now. No, you don't. Shows don't owe you that. No show owes you the answer immediately. No piece of media owes you answers for things immediately, in fact. Media doesn't owe you anything. We didn't. Honestly, we might not have deserved an Obi-Wan show with the way some people reacted.
Yeah.
Like, Disney could have just bought the rights and stopped making Star Wars products altogether.
They could have. They definitely could have.
So while you can have complaints about what we're getting, I think they need to be valid, and they need to be put with media literacy in mind. So you can have complaints, but I think at the same time we also have to appreciate that we're getting anything, let alone everything we're getting, because we're getting great books, we're getting great TV shows, we're getting great, in my opinion, movies.
Yeah.
And, I mean, this is honestly a renaissance. Like, I would argue this is a renaissance for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Or a second renaissance, I guess, because I would argue that the 90s was the first renaissance, because that's when we started to get really good books, and that was during a time when we thought there would be no Star Wars after the original trilogy, you know. So let's jump into episode 5.
Yeah.
So Anakin and Obi-Wan are dueling in this flashback.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's basically the overarching lesson for this episode, that Anakin needs to learn he needs to learn patience, which once again ironically goes into what I was just ranting about. We need to have a little patience. And it's why Anakin fails, because he rushes into it and doesn't know how to strategically hit his moment.
Mm-hmm.
And he does anything for the cost of victory without thought of that cost.
Patience. It's not one of Anakin's virtues.
No. Meanwhile, back in the present, Reva has tracked down Kenobi and everybody to Jabim, because it turns out in the previous episode, after Vader choked her and was like, "You let them go," she was like, "No, I put a tracker on them. I know where they are." And he's like, "Okay, you're not as stupid as I thought."
Like, anyhow, here's a promotion.
Yeah. At the beginning of this episode, she gets a promotion to Grand Inquisitor. And so he's like, "All right, as Grand Inquisitor, you're in charge of this operation. Get Kenobi."
Yep.
And she sees that as, well, not just get Kenobi, but also take down the path. But get Kenobi is her main target.
Yeah.
And so she's down on the planet. Turns out her tracking device is inside Lola, because in that moment when she grabbed Lola, she put a restraining bolt on Lola. The galaxy's tiniest restraining bolt.
Yeah.
And so they meanwhile, people on the path are getting ready for a fight.
Yep.
Leia, and also like evacuation at the same time. Leia is meanwhile trying to help by unlocking the doors, because they're stuck because the hangar is not opening.
Yep.
And so Leia and Lola are working on that. Haja is in charge of watching her, because it turns out Haja is there, because he's like, I can make some good money here by helping the path.
Yep.
And so, although I think it's because he has a good heart deep down. That's really what it comes down to, I think. We also see that the mom and Corrin are also here. I guess this was kind of like the halfway point to Corellia for them. They had to stop here and then get a new ship. But unfortunately, all of this is going down and preventing that. And so Roken is...
Should we talk about the reason why the hangar doors are not working?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
It's because Reva essentially found out and was like, y'all ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, she's basically locked them down.
Yeah, and she used Lola to do it.
Yeah. And so, there was something else I wanted to talk about, but I can't think of it right now. Anyways.
Is it the big thing? Or?
No. We're about to hit that, though.
Okay.
So basically, yeah. So basically, they're under siege, and we see Purge troopers in live action. Oh, the thing I wanted to talk about. Every episode of Obi-Wan is basically a episode of the original 6 saga films. This one is essentially the Hoth escape from episode 5. The last episode was the Death Star escape from episode 4. 3 was our fight on Mustafar. Just reversed. I can't think where 2 and 1 fit. But they're all supposed to be like, you're supposed to be able to see comparisons between each of the 6 episodes in one of the 6 movies. It's actually something the showrunner did on purpose. Like, she's come out and talked about it. So that's why this may seem familiar. And so we see Purge troopers from Jedi Fallen Order in live action for the... Actually, we saw them for the first time in episode 4 of this show, but we see them again in this episode, along with the stormtroopers. And basically, they do a full-on siege, and Obi-Wan's like, I'm gonna talk to them, but not before getting a call from Bail Organa going, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Just want to make sure everything's okay. If I continue to not hear from you, I'm gonna go to Tatooine and check on Luke." But yeah, Obi-Wan decides to go talk to Reva. Is there something before that I'm forgetting?
A little bit. Essentially, the discussion of, like, before talking to Reva, Obi-Wan's like, yo, I'm gonna go stall for time.
Yeah, and that's basically the reason he's talking to Reva.
And he's like, if it's not Reva, this is bad.
If it is, then perfect. I can distract her long enough.
Because he's like, if it's Reva, I can talk. If it's Vader,
there ain't no talking.
There's no talking. He'll just attack.
So he goes ahead and goes to the door. Thankfully, it's Reva. But Reva's like, I know you're distracting me, but that's fine because I do want to have this villain monologue where she basically explains what's going on. So here's what's happening. Also, this is the second episode in the show that got the trigger warning in front of it.
Yeah.
Because this time we get a flashback to Order 66 from her perspective, because it turns out the young girl that we see in the first flashback, because we do see her in the first flashback, is her. And it turns out that, Anakin killed all her friends and then stabbed her in the gut, leaving her for dead. Once again, going into a little bit of real-world scenarios, so this is a trigger warning, I guess, on our end. She talks about how she hid amongst the dead bodies to survive, which tells you why they needed to put that trigger warning at the start of this episode, because it's just like, yeah, that's a little too real, Star Wars. And basically, Obi-Wan starts to put 2 and 2 together, and he's like, oh my god, you're not hunting me. I'm the bait. You're hunting Vader.
You're here for Vader.
And she's like, yeah, I'm going to kill him for what he did. But I'm also mad at you because you let him do this.
So this is also your fault.
Yeah. Because she does lay the blame on Obi-Wan. She's like, where were you when your Padawan was doing this?
Yeah, like, I remember we were having this discussion. I was like, wasn't he being...
He was being shot at on
on Utapau?
Yeah, they were busy trying to murder him on Utapau. And unfortunately, by the time he does get to the Jedi Temple, there's a lot of dead.
Yeah.
It's too late. But yeah, so her plan is basically use Obi-Wan as bait, draw Vader out, and then kill Vader. Which tells us that she hasn't run into Vader face-to-face until today, ever. Because I would imagine she would have already... Like, when she got her promotion. Because in the other time she's talked to Vader, it's not been face-to-face in this show.
No, it's been face-to-face.
No, it's been holograms. Because on Mustafar, it was a hologram, if I remember correctly.
Maybe.
I might be wrong. I'm double-checking now. But let's keep talking while I double-check that.
You're probably right on this one.
I think the first time that Vader like straight up talks to her is when he's choking her. Not the best time to try revenge.
And so Tala dies because of this plan.
Yeah. Riva after they discuss the plan, and basically Riva's like, "You're not gonna kill Vader, but I will."
Yeah.
She cuts the door open because she's like, "I'll do what's necessary."
Yep. Tala gives Obi-Wan a little motivational speech before.
Yeah. Yeah, and her and so Tala and Ned B sacrifice themselves.
Yeah, so that the rest of the people can get away.
Yeah. And so it manages to work for the most part. But Obi-Wan's like, look, I'm going to give you guys even more time because I'm just going to turn myself in because Vader wants me, not you guys. Once he has me, he won't care.
Yeah. But before
so he gives Hodja his lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, before that. Was there something else before that?
Yeah, no, they talk him out of...
Yeah, they try to talk him out of it, but he's like, nah, I gotta do this. So he goes ahead and turns himself in.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Leia is almost done. It is hologram. So yeah, first time she runs into Vader face to face is when he's choking her on Nur. And then the second time is the promotion.
All right.
So
the gang escapes.
Well, before that, Leia has to undo the programming of Lola by pulling out the restraining bolt.
Yeah.
And so Obi-Wan basically turns himself in only for Reva to be like, nah, get out of here, essentially.
He's like, all right.
Cool.
Goodbye.
Have fun fighting Vader.
Yeah. And so
Vader storms in, Empire Strikes Back style, as the ship is taking off. He's like, nah, I'm going to pull Force Unleashed. Pulls it down. It just breaks off. He breaks it open only to turn out that it was a decoy.
Ew.
The real one got away.
Whew. Thank God that worked.
Unfortunately, for Vader, he's going to be occupied for a few more minutes because Reva decides to strike.
Like, you know what?
Now's a good time to fight.
Yep.
So we talked about a few minutes ago about how Vader's strong when he's just using a single hand. What if he's not even using a lightsaber?
Yeah, he spends most of the
he spends most of it just deflecting with the Force.
Like, no.
Stop it.
Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm just gonna
I'm gonna take your lightsaber, and we're gonna fight with your lightsaber. I'm not even gonna use my lightsaber. The disrespect.
We also had this discussion last night, and I'm like, why? Why does everyone scream during their sneak attack?
Because it's dramatic. But yeah, so Reva obviously loses.
Yeah.
And Vader stabs her in the same spot he stabbed her those years ago, and he's just like, hey, so you didn't think I didn't notice? Referring to the fact that he knew who Reva was.
Yeah, he's like, I remember you.
And that's when our boy Quizzy shows up and is like, I'm alive. Revenge is a powerful tool, man.
Revenge is an excellent motivator to live.
Yeah. And so Rebels canon is still canon. I mean,
I'm like, I know you, because my assumption is that Rebels takes place after this point because of how
timelines work, and also that Grand Inquisitor dies in Rebels.
Yeah, I'm like, so of course he's gonna be alive.
So yeah, so they leave her for dead, only for her to find the bailed communicator.
Yeah.
From Bail Organa, and she finds the message about Tatooine. And
she's like, oh,
yeah,
all right.
And so she obviously has a new mission of going to Tatooine. Obi-Wan senses this And we end with this episode with Luke sleeping peacefully. On to episode 6, the finale.
Episode 6.
It's all right, boys and girls. It's time for the Obi-Wan versus Vader. Let's get ready to. I can't finish this sentence because it's copyrighted. Well, trademarked actually, but still, I don't want to get sued by Vince McMahon. It's actually very dangerous to finish that. So yeah, we start on Mos Eisley.
Let's get ready for the next battle.
Yeah. So we start on Mos Eisley where Reva is hassling vendors and the foreman from Obi-Wan's workplace who was a jerk in episode 1.
Jackass.
And is like, where's the Lars farmstead?
And they're like,
that way.
Yeah.
That way, you crazy lady.
Yep.
Meanwhile, we get a little bit of a chase scene, a la The Last Jedi, with...
And they go...
Which is great for me that this scene that this episode is the chase scene from Last Jedi, because anybody who complains now about the Last Jedi chase scene has this now as well. Because everybody's like, why can't the Star Destroyer just catch up? Because it's bigger and slower. And the other ship can't just jump into hyperdrive space right now.
Yeah. And so Obi-Wan's like, alright, I actually have to leave this time. Because if I leave, Vader will follow me.
And you guys will be fine. You'll have time to fix the hyperdrive and get Leia home and everybody else to where they need to go. Yeah. Leia, of course, is not happy about this plan.
And he's like, deal with it. Also, here's a holster.
Well, hold on. Haja tells Obi-Wan to let her cool down first. And he makes Haja promise to make sure Leia gets home. Haja talks to her off screen, and then Obi-Wan is like, okay, are you good now? And she's like, yeah, I think I can deal with it. And he's like, hey, by the way, Roken found Tala's gun holster. And so here you go. And she's like, oh. And he's like, I know that you're only 10 now, but you won't always be. And you'll one day make a great leader. So that's why he gives her that. And so, Leia hugs Obi-Wan and smuggles Lola into his pocket the same way that she smuggled Lola out of her mom's pocket earlier in the show with the hug. Throwbacks. And so he's like, all right, time to distract Vader. Meanwhile, back on the Lars homestead, Owen has heard about what's about to happen and is like, all right, Beru, we got trouble. And Beru's like, oh, I'm ready. I'm packing.
We've got the plan.
And so she pulls out like all these guns that are hidden amongst the farmstead. And they tell Luke, okay, you got to hide in this room now. The Tuskens are coming. Kind of racist, but we'll move on from that.
Well, I've already explained to you.
Yeah, we'll move on from it. Because they got to tell Luke something other than a Force user is coming to kill you for some reason.
Yeah.
Because as far as we know, Luke doesn't even know what the Force is. He's never seen a lightsaber by the time of A New Hope. So Luke, we got to keep Luke in the dark, which I think the show does a good job of making sure Luke never sees any of the stuff. So meanwhile, Obi-Wan manages to get Vader distracted because they see the ship. And Vader's like, all right, let's follow that ship. Meanwhile, Grand Inquisitor's like, really? Shouldn't we go after the path? We can end this now. If we keep up. They're slow.
Yeah. And Vader's like, nah.
Nah, we're dealing with Vader. So they turn the entire Star Destroyer around.
I think I pointed this out.
Yeah, you're like, Vader could have just taken his own ship. Like, Vader could have taken his own ship and done it himself while Grand Inquisitor finished with the path. But yeah. I mean, it's to show how one-track mind Vader is being right now. Because Vader, similar to at the end of Part 5 of Vader still being the Padawan and not learning his lesson, he's still the Padawan at this moment.
Yeah.
It's why the line in A New Hope is going to stick even more when he says, "I was once the learner, but now I am the master." Because he was the learner last time they met, which is right now, as far as we know. So yeah, he goes to chase him to a barren moon. Meanwhile, the Lars family just kicks ass when Reva shows up.
They hold their own for a while.
Yeah, like they surprised attacked a Force user.
To be honest, if Lars had aimed just a little bit more,
if Owen had,
Reva wouldn't be around, to put it nicely.
Yeah, but they really hold their own.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not long enough, because she does make it to the room where Luke is, but Luke is already gone. He already ran out.
Climbed up onto the roof, and they're like, "Run!"
Yep. And then they're kicking Reva's ass still. Meanwhile, we get our rematch.
And
it's
a brief thing to note about Reva. She is like, "Wow, you really do love him as your own."
And Owen's like, "Well, he is my own." Oh, yeah. And so Reva chases Luke out into the desert.
Yeah.
And we're going to end it there so that way we can just talk about the Vader Obi-Wan fight as one piece, because I don't want us to go back and forth.
All right.
So we start with Obi-Wan basically still kind of... Well, first off, before he gets into the fight, he makes a prayer to Qui-Gon, going, "Hey, I'm going to try to reach out to you one more time before I fight my brother, your son, that you brought into this. Him or I are not making it out of this after this fight, so it'd be nice if you answer. Okay, bye."
No, nothing.
Right. Okay, well, provide me whatever strength you can. So, I know we're running a little long on the tooth.
It's fine.
But yeah.
I don't have anywhere else to go,
yeah.
So I'm just.
So they managed to make it to the rock moon, which is unidentified according to Wikipedia. We looked that up because we were like, where does this fight take place? It's just a moon. And so Obi-Wan gets his butt whooped at the start because he's still kind of trying to, sort things out. And Vader drops him into a hole that Vader made with the Force.
Yeah.
And then it's like, basically talking down to him. He's like, "This is why you lose," and all that shit. And then he drops rocks on him, leaving Obi-Wan for dead. And Obi-Wan uses the Force to be like, "No, I'm still here, holding these rocks." But in an inspirational moment, he starts to think back on his time with Luke and Leia, and how they're basically the future, and that he's got to win this fight for them.
Yeah.
So he finds a new hope, so to speak, and I made the joke last night too. And he gets himself out of the hole.
That heroic resolve's kicking in real nice right about now.
Gets himself out of the hole and silently strikes at Vader from behind, but Vader...
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, but he was at least quiet about it, unlike Reva.
Yeah.
And so...
He comes really close, too.
Yeah. And so they get into their second half of the rematch, and Obi-Wan is coming in a lot stronger this time, to the point where Vader is actually having to use both hands now.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan does this really cool Force push, slamming him into one of the rocks, and then lifts every rock around him and just... And of course I joke that it's like Vader's just going, "Stop it! I was just kidding. I'm gonna tell Mom." And so, because he's kind of just like, "Oh."
I'm thinking about it, I'm like, he used it, of course, because they're the same people. A lot of the
fight tactics that Anakin would use. And he uses some that Obi-Wan would use, which is, I mean, that's why the Revenge of the Sith Battle of the Heroes is so... They're using the same moves against each other a lot of the time in that fight. This fight, not so much. We see a lot more Qui-Gon in Obi-Wan's technique, because he actually switches lightsaber combat forms in the middle of the fight when he gets the inspiration to after getting out of the hole. He uses Qui-Gon's form rather than his. And so, yeah, so much so that he does the Ahsoka move from Rebels and jumps and cuts off half the mask. And we now know where the cut atop Vader's head comes from. That big old gash. Except this time, well, this is the first time technically that his mask gets cut in half. The second time is technically the Rebels fight with Ahsoka. But this time it's the other half of his mask. In the Rebels fight, it's this half. And in this show, it's the left half. And we get a little bit of a conversation that really breaks you. Like, as a fan, you're like, oh man, this is sad. All the emotions and feels. Because basically, Obi-Wan once again apologizes because Vader says that Anakin is gone. This is all that remains. And Obi-Wan's like, I failed you. I'm sorry. And Vader's like, oh, you didn't fail Anakin. I killed him. Which now gives Obi-Wan the excuse for why he says that Vader killed Anakin when he tells Luke that. It's like, technically Vader said that first. But that's because Vader is lying to himself. There is still a lot of Anakin in him.
Yeah, but that sure set Obi-Wan's mind at peace.
It set Obi-Wan's mind at peace, and it gave him the resolve to be like, oh, I'm not at fault. Like, and Obi-Wan was never truly at fault. That's a lesson he had to learn. That's part of his arc in this show, is learning to come to the conclusion that there was nothing he could do about Anakin by the time of, there was nothing. At that point, Anakin made his choice. And I mean, it's something that Bell told him at the start of the show. There was nothing you could do. And Obi-Wan was wallowing in his grief. You're allowed to have grief, but you can't wallow in it, because when you do, you drown.
Yeah.
And it's also the lesson for Reva. Because Reva is also wallowing in her grief. Mm-hmm. She's just using, instead of being depressed, which is what Obi-Wan is, Obi-Wan's got clear signs of depression throughout the show.
Yeah.
Reva instead decides to take that grief and turn it to anger and weaponize it. Both are terrible things. One is harming yourself and one is harming others. So at this point, after Vader tells him that there is no more Anakin, and that's when that Vader killed Anakin, and that's when Kenobi's like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah, he's like, okay, I can leave. I've bought enough time.
And I've also I've finally gotten the closure I've needed.
Yeah.
So, in fact, he doesn't call him Anakin anymore, because he's still calling him Anakin most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, he'll say Vader every now and then, but throughout most of the show, he says Anakin more than he says Vader.
And, like, that's...
Now he just calls him Darth.
Just Darth.
Because he's like, that's what you want to be called. All right, you're Darth now. Bye.
Yep.
I have no responsibility for you anymore.
You chose this.
And so, meanwhile, Obi-Wan... so Vader starts to call out to him in grief as well. And it's like, no, don't leave me. We're not done here. So the way he calls out for... Have you ever seen... I know this is probably a dumb question, but have you ever seen Prince of Egypt?
Yeah.
It reminded me of the scene at the end of Prince of Egypt when Ramesses is stranded alone and he's calling out to Moses. It reminded me of that moment.
Yeah.
And it's a good moment. It's a very powerful moment. So this was a good, powerful thing for me. I was like, man, I can hear the grief and loneliness in it, because you can tell there's a bit of loneliness in it. The way that he's like, come back here. I'm not done fighting you. Yeah. It's not because he cares about winning the fight or any of that. He does, but that's not the main reason why. It's because deep down, he does still care about Obi-Wan, and I think that's part of it. He doesn't want Obi-Wan to leave. It's a toxic way of doing.
It's not healthy.
It's not a healthy way that he's doing this. It would be healthy if he could just admit that he still cared. and that he is still Anakin somewhere, but he's chosen the more toxic side of it, and so he's toxically calling out for more of this. It's that relationship that's soured,
Yeah.
and you Obi-Wan is cutting it off like you reasonably should when it turns that way. There's a certain point where any relationship, dating, friendship, family, when somebody is toxic, you got to cut it off. And that's where Obi-Wan is. Obi-Wan's like, "All right, you've made your decisions. You've made it clear that you're not changing. So I'm cutting it off." Meanwhile, Anakin is pulling the "oh, I can change" by calling out to Obi-Wan and wanting more of what they're doing.
Fortunately, at the moment, that's violence.
Yeah. So, yeah, Obi-Wan then gets a sense of the danger going on Tatooine and is like, "All right, I gotta save
I
Luke.
gotta go now.
I gotta go save Luke."
Goodbye,
So,
Darth.
yeah. So, well, he says goodbye, Darth, before sensing the danger. He's on his ship when he senses the danger because he was about to head over to meet up with the rest of the path, and then he's like, "Oh, nope, I gotta go to Tatooine."
Yep.
So he heads to Tatooine, just in time to see Owen and Beru looking for Luke. Meanwhile, Reva has some flashes of
She fully debates just killing
murdering Luke. Yeah. But she starts to realize that she's becoming like Anakin during the moment of the purge, because she's like,
oh. I've said something, but I was like, that was like really, like just unnecessary at that moment.
yeah, but yeah, and so she sees herself in Luke, and then is like, okay, I can't do this.
How's that self-reflection going at that moment?
Yeah. And so she brings Luke back unharmed, and breaks down, and basically Obi-Wan comforts her and is like, "You've chosen a different path." Because she asks, she's like, "Have I become him?" And it's like,
goes, "No.
Nope, you chose not to. You literally made the opposite choices that he did, so you have now." And she, of course, feels like she failed her fellow younglings because she didn't kill Vader. And he's like, "Nope, you made them proud with this moment, the moment you just made. It's okay that you couldn't kill Vader. You made the right decision now, and therefore now you're on a new path." And so Reva resolves to continue living that new path. And meanwhile, back at Fortress Vader, Vader tells Sidious, "Hey, I'm looking. I'm gonna find Kenobi. Don't worry." And Emperor's like, "Oh, you seem a bit agitated. You good? You good, bro?"
Angry about this one.
Yeah. It's that separation of emotions from the workplace, and he's just like, "Are you gonna be able to separate this?" And that's when Vader's like, "Oh crap, I can't keep looking for Obi-Wan. Can't do that." Fine. I'll move on, Master. And
fine. So, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
If I happen to find him, I find him. If I don't, I don't.
Yeah. And so back on Alderaan, Leia has now dressed up a little more comfortably.
Yeah. Something that I did notice. Leia dresses herself. She doesn't allow
the handmaidens to do it. Yeah. So this time she dresses up herself comfortably. She gets some nice boots that are a remnant of the boots she'll have later on in future stuff that has her. She has the belt with the holster. And Breya comes in and is like, "Is that a holster?" And she's like, Yeah. She's like, "Oh, I like it. Good mom." Breya's a good mom.
Yeah.
And so they lead her to the ship where Leia's like, "Oh, more cousins?" Not really. It's Obi-Wan, and he brought Lola back.
Yeah.
And
like, who am I to separate a princess from a droid?
And so Kenobi offers Bell and Breyan's like, "Anytime you need help, just reach out. You know where to find me." Yeah. And then he also talks to Leia, and he's like, "Hey, I knew your parents." And God, this is when it.
A lot of bittersweet going on.
Yeah. So he's like, "You're wise, discerning, and kind-hearted. You got these from your mother. You're passionate, fearless, and forthright, which are gifts from your father." And then he departs because he's got to go meet Luke.
Yep.
Because now him and Owen are on a little bit better understanding. Yeah. Still not the best.
Not the best, but it's better.
Yeah. So basically, Obi-Wan's like, you are in charge of watching Luke. I put you in charge of that, so I'm gonna back off a bit and let you do that. And Owen appreciates that and is like, and he even lets Luke have he even lets Obi-Wan meet him. And so Obi-Wan brings the T-16 Skyhopper with him to give to Luke, and he says the signature, "Hello there," which almost should have been where the show ended. Almost. But there's one more thing the show had to do.
Yep.
There's one more thing, and it's something that was promised throughout the entire show.
Yep.
And episode 3.
Yep.
Obi-Wan is out in Baker's Canyon, moving out of the cave, making his own new house, when he runs into the Force ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. Who basically is like, hey, I've been here the whole time, you just weren't listening, you dumbass.
Hey, did you resolve
your issues?
Good, we can get started.
Yeah. Because basically, Obi-Wan had to let go of his grief before...
Emotions and the Force are both...
good and bad.
Yeah. They're good in the sense that during times they can provide you with great strength. However, other times, they'll just fuck it up.
Yeah.
Horrendously.
Yep.
Very much like in real life. Like, emotions have a purpose.
Yep.
But sometimes
they just get in the way.
Yeah.
So that was Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, final thoughts.
I enjoyed it.
Is this pretty much everything that you were hoping?
Yes, because I am a sucker for old man comes out of retirement
to do one last job.
And has to deal with a small child.
Star Wars tends to enjoy having a father figure and a child go on adventures. Honestly, the girl who played young Leia is amazing.
Yeah, she is.
She
does a good job.
She is one of the best parts of this show. And she really embodies Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
Like, she really gets the character. Anybody who says otherwise does not understand Princess Leia. And I know that's a bit toxic to say, but I think I'm right to say that. I think if anybody says that girl did not embody Leia as a character, they don't understand the Leia character. Obi-Wan was great.
Yeah.
Reva's a great character I'm not, because I discussed this with Scotty, I'm not chomping at the bits for more of her, but I am interested in more. I would not turn down more. And I think we're going to get more because there's rumors and speculations of a Path show being in the work.
I would.
And because there's a couple things that give that rumor credibility. The first is you don't hire O'Shea Jackson Jr. to play a tertiary character in the background.
No.
And so that was probably a backdoor pilot for him. This is probably a backdoor pilot. And also, like, they left Moses Ingram, the actress who played Reva, in a really good position to continue her journey towards redemption in another show. And so people are thinking maybe Reva and Roken team up as part of the Path show, and we might get more of Haja, because once again, you don't get an actor like Kumail Nanjiani for a tertiary character. Especially right now, and Disney's loving using Kumail Nanjiani for projects because he's been in Eternals, and so like they brought him in the Star Wars fold now. So like,
so I'll say this: I'm not opposed to seeing more of Reva, but I wouldn't.
Like, it's not on your bucket list. Yeah, like it's not one that you're dying to see. But but like if you get it, you'll be like, oh sweet, more Reva.
Oh, all right, cool.
Yeah, it's like that's where I am. I'm like
I don't hate the character.
In fact, I think the character is great and well written. And
I don't love the character, but they're
in the middle,
a bit above the middle.
Yeah,
but not by much.
Yeah, And I think Moses Ingram did a great job with her performance too. I think that's also important. Is the story makes sense, and I think Moses brought a lot to the character outside of what the script provided her. You can have problems with the script. I know some people that have problems with episode 6 and feel like that she's just there as like
No, she has a purpose for being there.
Yeah, I've had a discussion with some people who think that she's just there to fill time in the episode, but on Tatooine, and I'm like, no, there's more to it, and because she's still trying to, her purpose isn't fulfilled for the show yet. But yeah, I would definitely put this as one of the higher up TV shows for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Rebels and Clone Wars probably still above it, but it's definitely the highest out of the rest of the Disney era. Except for, I don't know if maybe Mando. I haven't decided yet if Mando is above or below it, but it's close. Obi-Wan was that good of a show. There's also speculation of a season 2. I don't need a season 2. I'm fine with where the story ended.
Yeah, it's good enough.
But I also wouldn't. I wouldn't turn it down if we get to see more of Qui-Gon. If that's what season 2 is, and it's more of Obi-Wan learning from Qui-Gon, then I'm down for that. But if you don't know what you're gonna do with season 2 yet, don't push it.
Yeah, I think it should stay where it is for now.
Yeah, for now. All right. Well, that was Obi-Wan Kenobi and our full thoughts on it. We are almost at 2 hours, so.
Oh shit. Okay.
We really deep dived into it. So next week we are going to read Star Wars Stories of Jedi and Sith, which is a short story collection. It's like 7 or 8 short stories spanned across the timeline, starting with the High Republic era all the way to the sequel era.
All right.
And of course are about Jedi and Sith, as the title implies. So that'll be next week. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, which is youtube.com/Escape Reality Films. And don't be afraid to leave a comment down below. If you are watching on twitch.tv/CJ Star Wars 94, feel free to follow or subscribe to us. Every little bit helps. Speaking of every little bit that helps, we also have a Patreon where you can become a patron member for us at patreon.com/Escape Reality Films. If you're watching on YouTube, it's actually linked down below, and there's different tiers that you can join that help us out. Thank you guys. Thank you to Gamers and Geeks, our local gaming shop here in Mobile, Alabama. They provide us this space along with the Mopcast Network, where we record. And if you're ever in the Mobile area and you're looking for a gaming shop, this is the spot for it. It's down on Moffett. They've got pretty much any card game you can think of: Magic, Pokemon, all that stuff. They also got board games. They got mini type games, so you can do like. If you're a fan of Warhammer, they've got Warhammer 40K. They actually have days for that. They have painting days, and painting contests. So if you're into that, they also have an arcade in the back, $10 for free play all day. And then next door in the same building, we've got Engage, another friend of the channel. They let you pay a monthly membership fee, and you can play any console that they've got. Inside the store, and they even provide the games for you if there's a specific game you want to play. They've got all the consoles pretty much that are currently out except for like next gen. Like I don't think they have PS5s or Xbox Ones. I haven't seen one anyways. But they also got PC and VR, so all the good stuff. And as I said before, the studio is also provided by Mopcast Network. Another channel on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Mopcast Network. They're also on any podcast app that you can find. They're pretty much everywhere, and if they're not, you can email them and let them know, hey, you're not on this one. And they do a couple shows. They do Cult Movie Cantina, which this week we are doing our cult meeting, where we're just hanging out and trying out. We're going to have some cotton candy. They look like cheese balls, but they're cotton candy flavored, and they don't have any cheese, but they're like the same like consistency. Yeah. And we
That's an odd.
And then our next move, I'm not going to reveal the next movie yet, but I will next week. But we also have Obi-Wan Days currently instead of Star Wars Mondays, which we're currently an episode behind on that. So this week, I think we're coming out. We're actually a couple episodes behind. So this week we're coming out with part 5. I think it's out right now, actually, this week's episode, where we talk about part 5. And then next week we're going to be talking about part 6. And so that's everything I can think of. Is there anything you need to promote or anything?
Thank you to our one patron.
Oh, yeah. Let's shout out to our one patron, Seth's mom. Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
She's been great and a loyal supporter.
Yeah, you got to meet her.
Yeah,
actually talk to her.
Yeah, she's great. She's great.
Time. I swear to you, my mom is not like an actual witch.
No. She's great. I love it. All right. Yeah, I think that's it. Everything. Yeah, that's everything. So, thank you guys for watching, and I have spoken.
You already know the bit. I give up.